good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here. You know, today is Father's Day, as we've talked about, and it's really a pleasure for me to be here specifically on Father's Day. It's not just because I'm a father of three wonderful sons, and so I feel like I have a lot to say about being a father. I've got some experience under the belt on that one. But it's also because when I first came here, I don't think I was fully an adult yet. You know, I was in my late 30s, and I would be maybe what I would call an emergent adult. You know, definitely an adult. I had responsibilities and everything, but I hadn't matured fully. So really, it is Namaste that helped me move beyond. So in reality, you guys are all fathers to me, and I want to just say thank you for that piece. Also, when I first came to Namaste, there is no way I would have wanted to be a father. There just was not that alive in myself. And it was really my experience here at Namaste, all the things that we do in community, all the things that we do together, that changed me and made me be open for being a father in a way that I was not before. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but if I had not come to Namaste, there would be a big hole in my life where my kids are today. So I want to say thank you for that too. So Father's Day happens in June. The summer solstice happens in June. And so June, we have a theme going on here at Namaste called Expansive Community. And Reverend James has already done a couple of talks on this theme. The first one he did was Picture on the Box, where he talked about all the puzzle pieces that we could be, all the sizes and shapes and colors, and how you need to have every piece of the puzzle in order to create the community that you're looking for, which is represented by that picture on the box. And then last week, he talked about how what we do together is everything. And that's an expression we've had here at Namaste for many years. But Tracy was nice enough to come up, and she had a video, and she talked about how that has gone beyond us, beyond our community, and it's expressing out in the world beyond what Namaste does on Sunday. It's expressing at a middle school. And I'm sure there's many, many places where that expresses outside of here. And so it shows the power of community. It shows the power that we have in coming together on Sunday and in having this special process that we call our Sunday celebration and all the things that we do besides here on our classes and workshops and our gatherings outside of here. They all have impact outside of just Sunday. So you should congratulate yourself on that because you're a part of all of that. And today, my talk title is Can't Stop Pop. And so we're going to be focusing on the fatherly energy in community and how does that express in our lives. And as I mentioned earlier, really you don't have to be male for this to show up in your lives. There's plenty of places where, you know, women are fathers, men are mothers, and even besides that, there is a male energy that everybody shares in because that is an expression of the divine as us. And so we should all celebrate today as Father's Day in our own way. So there's another piece of this, which is in financial freedom, one of the things that we say is how we do our money is how we do life. And we can extrapolate that into all different ways. How we do our relationships is how we do life. How we drive a car is how we do life. How we are fathers is how we do life also. And so I want to talk a little bit about the father experience and what that means. But then there's a corollary to that, which is because God is everywhere present, we live and have our being within God. how we do anything is how we do God also. And so I want to talk about how being a father and expressing that fatherly energy in all the different ways is also an expression of our relationship to God. So today, I mentioned earlier that I have 3 wonderful sons. I do, Cody, Dylan, and Jonathan. Jonathan's right back in the back there. Yeah, hi, Jonathan. And I also mentioned that Namaste had a lot to do with me becoming a father, but I want to go into a little bit more detail on that, just to give you a flavor of what that meant for me. I came to Namaste when I was 39, and as I said, I wasn't ready to be a father. And about a year later, after I started coming, Namaste had the Orange County adoption services out at a table outside. And, you know, Gabriel and I went and we talked to them, and we ended up with this thought suddenly appearing in our heads of, oh, hey, we could be fathers. You know, that could be a possibility for us. But if that had been my first week at Namaste, I doubt I would have even stopped at that table. But what had transpired between the time I had started and when that table was there is I had taken foundations class. And for those of you who have not taken foundations, foundations is our entry-level accredited course. It teaches us all about the basics of science of mind, which is the philosophy that we go through or that we follow. And in that process, one of the nights is Forgiveness Week. And I had a lot to forgive. And what it taught me was that forgiveness was an internal process, that I didn't need to truly change anybody in order to forgive. And so I was able to work through the forgiveness that I needed for my childhood, because in truth, I didn't have a great childhood. And so I was able to work through that to the point where when that Orange County adoption services came, I was open and I was receptive to that possibility. Another thing that Namaste brought into my life was my year of, especially my first year of practitioner training. There's 2 years in practitioner training, but the first year is all about cleaning up inside. And so I didn't adopt Cody and Dylan until I was about 2/3 of the way through. And in fact, after I adopted them, I had to drop out of that first year because it was just too much, right? Insta-dad and practitioner training wasn't going well together. But in those first 20 weeks, what I got out of that was an alignment internally. I was able to see myself and see my role and understand where I was creating from, so that when I became a father, I was not replicating that cycle that we see so often of children who have a crappy childhood growing up to be parents who have children who have a crappy childhood. And so I thank you, and Joanne, you're here today. Thank you very much. And so then it was about that time we went and we adopted Cody and Dylan. They were 13 and 16 at the time. And then 4 years later, we came back and adopted John, and he was 6 years old. And so, let's see, it's been 13, coming up on 13 years, no, 12 years. It's been 12 years since we adopted Cody and Dylan. And I've got a lot of experience through that process to talk about today. And I want to talk about, how that reflects both in our daily life and also in the way we work with spirit. So the first thing that I noticed as I was thinking about being a father is I noticed that when Cody and Dylan came into my life and I became an insta-dad, that I really wanted to be useful to them. There was a sudden urge within me that I had to be useful. It wasn't just, giving a home and food on the table and pushing them out the door for school. I wanted to be a part of the forming of these two teenagers and forming them into the men that they were going to be and being useful to them in that process and beyond. And so there's a book that I've read that reminds me a little bit about that process. It's called The Giving Tree, and it's by Shel Silverstein. And in that book, a boy goes out into the forest and he finds an apple tree. And, as little boys do, he climbed in the tree and he climbed on the branches and he ate the apples, and the tree was happy. And then as he grew from a boy into a man, he didn't come as often, and the tree was sad when he wasn't there, but he would show back up, and he would come and he would take the apples so he could sell them at the market and get money. And he took the branches so he could make his house, and he took the trunk so he could make a ship, and all that was left of the tree was the stump. But every time the boy who is now a man came into the forest to be with the tree, no matter how the tree was used, the tree was happy. And when the boy became a very old man, he came back to the tree after a very long time, and he sat on the stump of the tree and rested, and the tree was happy. Now, I have two sons who are 25 and 28 now, and I can tell you that I resonate with this story because they are they're grown. Those two are grown. I've still got one teenager at the house, but those two are grown. And it is always my dearest hope and wish to still be useful to them. And, it's funny because when I was writing this part of my talk, Dylan, my middle son, called me. And he just wanted to say hi. And tell me that he loved me. And share his day with me. And I, like the tree, felt useful, and I was happy. And God is like that. But in this case, I am the boy, and I'm frolicking in the leaves and the branches of the tree that is God, and I'm eating God's apple. And when I become older and I become a man, I come back to that tree and I take its apples and its branches and its trunk in order to create my life. But out of all the infinitude and all the infinite number of beings and things in the universe, all I ever get when I commune with God, when I take that time to know the power and the presence God is that God is happy. God is happy that we reach out and that we touch it. And it is happy that it is useful. That's my take on it. And so on this Father's Day, what I would invite you to do is take some time today to commune with that spirit and to know it as that giving tree essence, that place that is always giving to us. And then second thing I thought about was that I realized, especially for Cody and Dylan, they were 13 and 16, they had been in foster care for 2 years, that I needed to be a rock in their lives. They had been cast adrift, and they needed anchoring. And I needed to be that for them. Now, in particular, I know that my middle son, Dylan, needed that. Some of you probably remember Dylan. Well, you know, when I first met Dylan, I walked in because Cody and Dylan were in foster care, and they were available. They needed a new foster home. And Gabriel and I wanted to make sure that they were okay being with us, so we went to visit them and talked to them. And I met Dylan on the day after his 13th birthday, and I can see him like he is right here, right now, in his green football jersey with his sun-bleached hair and his hazel eyes and his button nose and the little freckles on his cheeks. And I knew that I fell in love with him in that moment when he showed me his little box of Altoids that inside of it had his baby teeth. His prized possession, the one thing that he was able to carry around with him in all the moves that he made. But when I got Dylan home, he came to us 2 days later, and when I got Dylan home, there was always that side to Dylan. But then, you know, they get comfortable, and you see the other side. And that's what my mother would call full of fizz and vinegar. Although I think she used a different word, but that's okay. So, you know, the truth is that Dylan was a very angry child, too. He was sweet, and he was angry. And that anger would pop out, and he needed to vent that anger. And who else would he vent it to but his father? And that anger was kind of a black, dark anger that just kind of fizzed all over everybody. And we used to take him to what we called anger management classes. And, you know, the counselor that he saw was wonderful. And she would tell me, Scott, you're Dylan's rock. And it was true. And there were times when he would say the most incredibly horrid things. But every time he did, what I saw was that the blackness that was inside of him was coming out. And it was like a little chink was coming off the armor that he had put around his heart. And it gave me the ability to see inside to that soft, gooey interior that was the real Dylan. Now, Dylan is 25 years old. And for those of you who might have experienced Dylan as a teenager, you probably wouldn't recognize him today. Because Dylan is actually now one of the most centered young men that I know. There is no more anger. It's all been let out. And what I want to say about God is that I think God is like that. God is our rock. And sometimes we all need to go to anger management with God. We all need to take that opportunity to just vent, to yell, to scream, to let it all out. But you know what? God's not going anywhere. With Dylan, I used to tell him specifically, I would say, Dylan, it does not matter what you ever do in life. There is nothing you could ever do that I would not love you. You could commit murder and I would come and visit you in jail. You can run away and I will always search for you. And God is like that. When you yell and you scream against God, God's not going anywhere. God is always right there. If you commit murder, God will be with you in jail. If you run away from God, God will find you, because God will never be separate from you. And so, we get the opportunity to celebrate that in our lives. And then third thing that I recognized was in my acts of child rearing as a father, especially with teenagers don't listen to you. They really do not. I love you, John, but I know you don't listen. And so, especially with older teenagers, I got known for my sarcasm. I have to say, it was a great fatherly tool. If you don't know what sarcasm is like, it goes like something like this. Cody, my oldest, was a rollerblader. He loved to rollerblade. And he would come and he would tell me something like, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to go out and hop a 10-step today," which would mean that he would find a set of stairs with 10 steps, and he would go to the top, and he would find a long, straight path that he could get up a lot of speed on his rollerblades and jump out and hopefully get beyond the 10th stair so he could land. And, I couldn't tell him no, because he was 16, 17 years old. So what would I use? I would use sarcasm. And I would say, that is a great idea. Because when you go out and you break both of your legs, you won't be able to run away when I want to talk to you about school. And hopefully it sank in a little bit. But I think God is like that too. Sometimes we say stupid things. It might only just be in our head, and we may not even realize we're saying it. For example, we might say something like, I really just got out of a rotten, sucky relationship, but I'm going to go out and find the exact same person in a different disguise and have it all over again. And God, because, God is freedom, says, "Absolutely, my darling. Here's one that will replace the last one, just like before." And I know that when you are alone and desperate, that maybe then, just maybe, you will know that I am your beloved. And so sometimes we hear that in the very back of our brains, that little sweet sound of sarcasm. When it's sweet and loving and full of wisdom, then you know that's God. And so I invite you to listen for that. And then last of all, what I know as a father is that it needs to be a process where you're steadfast. It's a process where the heroics really do not count that much, maybe a little bit, but it's not about being a weekend warrior with your children. It's about being there at night and tucking them in, reading them a bedtime story, and kissing them on the forehead so that they know that in their slumbers they are safe. And our time with God is like that. It's not about the heroic efforts. It's not about going to a 2-week silent meditation or anything like that, although those are sweet, those are good. Feel free. But what it's about is it's about that daily, regular practice of connecting with the beloved. It's about praying without ceasing, which doesn't mean that we're sitting there, in yoga postures or anything all day long. It just means that just underneath the thought processes that you're using for today, the doingness of the world, the work, the conversations, all of that, that just underneath that is a tape that's playing and knowing absolutely that you are the beloved, that God as the beloved is absolutely within touch because it is within here. And so what I want to leave you with today is 4 things. I want you to go out today on this Father's Day and remember God. Remember your fathers, remember all of that and the people that are in your life. But remember God also. And remember God as God shows up as that giving tree, because it really is the giving presence in your life. And remember God as that rock that you get to rail against whenever you're troubled, and know that it will never, ever leave you. And remember God as that little voice back in the back of your head, maybe a little bit of sweet sarcasm. And remember God by allowing that tape to roll, just knowing that God is you and that you are the beloved. Thank you and namaste. Let's just go into prayer. And I invite the practitioners to stand and anybody else that would like to stand and hold the consciousness for the congregation. I just drop down inside of me to that place that knows that it knows that it knows. That place inside of me that knows the life and the power and the presence that God is. That place inside of me that is absolutely the same as that which God is. And so I am the love that God is. I am the peace. I am the joy. And each and every person here is that same. We are all the life and the power and the presence that God is. We are all the divine. And so we are the love and the joy and the peace that gets to flow out of this place and flow through all of our interactions with our fathers, with people who see the world the same way as we do, and people who may not. It gets to flow out into the world where there might be strife. And it gets to flow out into the world to reinforce those places of peace that are already in our lives. It gets to be the presence and the power as each one of us. It gets to live its life through and as us, knowing that in the infinitude that it is well expressed by each and every one of us. That we are the love. We are the light. We are the joy. And for knowing that as the truth of us, knowing it for every person here today, for the fathers who are not here, for those of them that may have passed, that we mourn. I know that is the truth of them all. And I just say, thank you, God, that is good and very good, and so it is. Amen.
I am the song